Jaguar Wright just dropped explosive claims exposing 50 Cent as Diddy's top partner in the Cassie scandal. This insider reveals shocking secrets, betrayals, and the dark side of the music industry that no one talks about. Stick around. The truth is deeper and dirtier than you think. The truth behind the Cassie and Diddy saga is coming to light, and Jaguar Wright isn't holding back. Her words cut deep, calling out powerful players and exposing the ruthless tactics used to control and silence. This isn't gossip. It's a raw look into a world where loyalty, betrayal, and intimidation collide. The names, the stories, the hidden footage, it all paints a picture of a music industry under siege by secrets too heavy to ignore. Jaguar Wright opens with a stark warning that what's unfolding is far from just celebrity gossip or petty drama. This is a serious matter where real lives have been shattered by those who wield influence and power in the shadows. She emphasizes that people have been deeply hurt, some even destroyed, and that ignoring this reality is no longer an option. The entertainment industry, often glamorized, hides a dark underbelly where fear and control shape the fates of many. Jaguar's words are a call to face this truth head-on. This is serious. People have been hurt. People have been destroyed.
Man, it's a lot of stuff that Mace and Usher know that they ain't telling about Diddy.
From the outset, Jaguar is unapologetic. She refuses to let powerful figures off the hook by cloaking their actions in silence or manipulation. She challenges those who portray themselves as victims but who, in reality, have played a role in perpetuating harm. Turning her focus sharply on 50 Cent's she directly confronts him, exposing his alleged complicity in a web of intimidation and betrayal. Jaguar's tone leaves no room for evasion or denial, signaling that the time for hiding behind public personas is over. Now you just want to be the lineup King Curtis, huh? How about we line you up everything you did with Soulja Boy?
There's a lot of stuff that they know. Can you imagine?
Her challenge is more than a simple call-out. It's an invitation to unpack the tangled relationships and power struggles that have defined this scandal. Jaguar suggests that these aren't isolated incidents, but part of a larger culture of control, manipulation, and exploitation that has allowed abuses to continue unchecked. By naming names and confronting her adversaries publicly, she breaks the code of silence that protects many in the industry. Jaguar then highlights one of the most notorious and violent incidents associated with this saga, the bombing of Kid Cudi's car. This act, which sent shockwaves through the music community, is portrayed as a brutal message meant to intimidate and silence. Jaguar implicates 50 Cent in helping facilitate this attack, describing it as part of a broader pattern of violent tactics used to maintain power and control over those who might threaten it. Fingering the expletive man for helping Diddy boom Kid cut his car.
Long list of people he allegedly took advantage of. But if what's coming out now is true, we might have had it all backwards. Lately there's been talk that the feds are digging into whether Usher actually played a bigger role.
This allegation is a window into the dark reality of how intimidation operates behind closed doors. Violence is not random, but strategically used to enforce loyalty and silence dissent. Jaguar's revelation forces a reckoning with the fact that these tactics are part of the systemic abuses embedded within the industry's power structures. It shows how fear is weaponized and how those caught in these cycles are often left with little recourse. Despite the severity of these accusations, Jaguar points out a troubling contradiction. Those who allegedly know the most remain untouched by the legal system. She questions why 50 Cent, who reportedly has intimate knowledge of these acts and relationships, has not been called to testify or forced to provide evidence in court. This lack of accountability is portrayed as a glaring flaw in the pursuit of justice. If he knows so much, why isn't he a material witness?
It's about Diddy's weird inappropriate behavior around young boys. Most folks just assumed Usher was one of the ones who gotten taken advantage of, but now this new angle has people completely thrown. It's flipping the whole story on its head. Now Usher has taken.
Her words express a deep frustration with what she sees as a system that selectively enforces consequences. While some individuals face public scrutiny, lawsuits, and intense legal pressure, Others seemingly operate above the law, shielded by their status and connections. Jaguar's critique highlights the uneven playing field and calls for a more transparent and fair legal process. She goes on to contrast her own legal challenges with the behavior of others, particularly 50 Cent, who she accuses of dry snitching. This term refers to making cryptic or veiled accusations on social media without taking full responsibility or coming forward in a legal capacity. Jaguar's observation exposes a culture where public posturing replaces genuine accountability, allowing influential figures to evade deeper consequences. Everybody's so interested in hauling me off the court, but this man is sitting over here dry snitching for almost 2 years straight. Why is he not being called in all of this?
Whatever happened between him and Diddy back in the day, and honestly, who could blame him? There's no shortage of stories.
This pointed criticism forces the audience to question how power dynamics influence who is held accountable and who remains protected. Jaguar's narrative suggests that social media snitching is a tool used to maintain appearances without challenging the status quo, while true transparency and justice remain elusive. She challenges viewers to look beyond the headlines and social media noise to see the broader implications of silence, secrecy, and selective enforcement. The message is clear. Real justice demands that those who hold key information come forward and that the legal system stops shielding insiders at the expense of victims and truth. Jaguar Wright's testimony is a wake-up call to recognize and dismantle the structures that allow abuse and intimidation to flourish behind the scenes. It pushes the conversation beyond mere celebrity scandal and into the realm of accountability, fairness, and systemic reform. The accusations escalate when Jaguar Wright dives into the world of violence and intimidation that underpins much of the scandal. She paints a chilling picture of how threats aren't just words, but are backed by actions that leave lasting scars. One of the most disturbing examples she brings up is the incident involving Kid Cudi's car being bombed. A violent act meant to intimidate and send a clear message to anyone who dares cross certain lines. She points directly to 50 Cent's involvement, implying that his hand was not only in the planning, but in the execution of this dangerous tactic. Jaguar's blunt phrasing leaves no doubt about the seriousness of this charge. Fingering the expletive man for helping Diddy boom Kid cut his car.
And chooses to finish this show by lecturing the audience on how journalism ought to be done. Speaking as Edward R. Murrow, he warns about the ongoing struggle for truth and integrity.
This revelation is more than a mere throwaway comment. It exposes a deeply entrenched culture of fear, where violence becomes a tool to maintain control and silence opposition. Jaguar's testimony sheds light on the darker mechanisms at play, how reputations and careers are protected not just through influence but through intimidation and, at times, outright threats. She then calls into question the glaring absence of legal accountability surrounding these acts. Despite the alleged knowledge and involvement of key players like 50 Cent, there appears to be a disturbing silence from the legal system. Jaguar raises a critical question that many viewers may have pondered. Why hasn't someone so close to these events been called to testify or face scrutiny in court? If he knows so much, why isn't he a material witness?
It was a civic duty. When I saw people on my side of the street not telling the truth, I thought that was time to...
Are people still mad at you for that?
Some people, sure.
Wow, if that's Clooney with makeup.
This question underscores a deeper frustration with a system that seems to apply justice unevenly. While some individuals endure relentless legal pressure and public humiliation, others enjoy protection, slipping through the cracks. Jaguar's words expose this imbalance and demand a fairer approach, one where all who hold significant information are compelled to come forward. Further fueling her criticism, Jaguar accuses 50 Cent of engaging in what she terms dry snitching, posting cryptic, insinuating messages on social media without fully owning up to the truth or participating in legal processes. This behavior, she suggests, is a form of evasion rather than transparency, a way to maintain appearances without risking accountability. Everybody's so interested in hauling me off the court, but this man is sitting over here dry snitching for almost 2 years straight. Why is he not being called in all of this?
Imagine what he looks like without it, huh?
The carefully constructed image of Clooney, the principled truth-teller, soon began to fray at the edges, mostly around the inconvenient matter of timing. It emerged that his damning op-ed surfaced after he'd attended a star-studded fundraiser for Biden, an event where, by his own later admission, he'd witnessed the president's concerning frailty up close. Yet the call for Biden to step down only came after the infamous debate, when the entire nation saw what Clooney had apparently observed weeks prior. He decried profiles in cowardice within his own party, yet many wondered why his own profile in courage had taken so long to materialize. Was this a sudden epiphany or a conveniently timed maneuver once public opinion had already shifted? The questions began to pile up and the narrative started to sour, and what happened next would turn those questions into a public spectacle.
This pointed observation highlights a troubling dynamic in the public discourse, where social media spectacle replaces real justice and where powerful figures can dodge direct questions and consequences. Jaguar's narrative urges audiences to critically assess these patterns and to recognize when public hints are being used to deflect rather than to confront. She calls on viewers to demand a shift in this culture, to insist that those with knowledge no longer hide behind veiled posts but step into the light of accountability. For Jaguar, this is not just about individuals, but about breaking a cycle of silence and complicity that has long shielded wrongdoing in the entertainment world. Her testimony acts as a catalyst, pushing the conversation into a space where transparency and fairness are no longer optional, but necessary. It's a call to hold every player accountable, regardless of their fame or influence, and to challenge the systems that have allowed injustice to thrive behind the scenes. Jaguar Wright points out that the scandal is about far more than legal battles. It's about the relentless pressure and public attacks that have left victims emotionally battered and socially isolated. Cassie, at the heart of this controversy, has endured not just private pain, but a barrage of public smears designed to undermine her credibility and destroy her reputation. Jaguar's words make clear how damaging these campaigns have been, especially as Cassie faces them during one of the most vulnerable times in her life. She highlights how Cassie has been called degrading names and dismissed by former associates and fans alike, even as she navigates pregnancy and legal turmoil. These aren't mere insults thrown in passing, they are strategic attempts to break down her support and silence her voice. People have been hurt. People have been destroyed.
Of course, and their vaunted profession, and how bad, how just terrible the media is, and had the following exchange.
What we do in this is we talk about the responsibility.
Calling her an expletive, telling people not to care about her baby.
Knew Biden was the worst president ever, which probably means Jimmy Carter died a happy man.
This viciousness exemplifies a toxic culture that uses personal attacks as weapons to isolate victims. Jaguar exposes how the intersection of public scrutiny and personal hardship has compounded Cassie's struggles, painting a harsh picture of what it means to stand against powerful figures in an unforgiving industry. Beyond the public defamation lies a more insidious form of control. Jaguar delves into the complex web of Cassie's past relationships, revealing how Diddy allegedly worked to isolate her by intimidating other men interested in her. This manipulation ensured that Cassie remained within his influence, cut off from potential sources of support or escape. If Diddy has ran around and threatened every other man interested in Cassie while abusing her, why wouldn't we think he put moves on Ryan Leslie?
Cara Palmieri, who's got her own Substack and podcast now, she's been on the show, she got a copy and released a couple of the nuggets, and so did The Guardian. But hers was a really interesting nugget. And she's apparently in this book, they reveal that George Clooney saw Morning Joe one day, right after his op-ed, and Mika Brzezinski was suggesting that Barack Obama was behind the George Clooney op-ed. That was basically making Clooney seem like Obama's puppet. Yeah. Here's the
Jaguar's insight shows how abuse is not only about physical or emotional harm, but also about social control, keeping victims trapped by cutting off their connections. She brings attention to how little the public knows about the full story behind Cassie's relationships, urging listeners to consider the broader implications of isolation and control. Her words highlight how the public often misses the bigger picture, focusing on surface-level narratives while overlooking the underlying dynamics of power and manipulation. Jaguar's revelations encourage a more nuanced understanding of abuse, one that recognizes the many ways victims are silenced and confined beyond just physical violence. Jaguar Wright does not hold back in exposing the deep-rooted patterns of bullying and control that have long defined Diddy's approach to relationships and power. She describes a history where intimidation is the primary tool used to bend others to his will, whether women he pursues or men who might stand in his way. Her words reveal a person who doesn't just manipulate emotionally, but actively exerts dominance to ensure compliance and possession. Diddy has a history of bullying women into relationships with him and bullying men away from the women that he desires to possess.
Mr. Combs spoke to the female contestants in a hostile, condescending manner, making it disparaging and gender-based remarks such as calling them fat, ugly Bs and 304s. Miss Richard felt threatened and intimidated by Mr. Combs' blatant disdain for the young women, like herself, who were excited for the opportunity to be on his show. She continued, once the ban was made, Mr. Combs' contempt for women was readily apparent as he continued to display a hostile behavior towards Miss Richard and her all-female that became bandmates. Mr. Combs regularly referred to the 5 women as B's and hoes and denigrated their physical appearances. By way of example, Mr. Combs stated that Miss Richard was too skinny and needed to do something about this, her face.
This blunt admission frames the scandal as part of a larger systemic issue of power abuse in the entertainment industry, where control is maintained through fear and coercion rather than respect or consent. Jaguar's voice becomes a call for awareness, highlighting that these patterns must be confronted if meaningful change is ever to occur. She closes her testimony by giving a shout-out to the reality street stars, a nod to those living these harsh realities every day, grounded in real experiences far from the polished public image. This ending note reinforces that Jaguar's revelations are not just stories, but reflections of lived truth, calling for solidarity with those impacted by similar struggles. Moving beyond individual actions, Jaguar exposes a broader industry culture where victims are often turned into villains through orchestrated smear campaigns. She explains how these tactics are designed to isolate survivors, damage their credibility, and protect powerful figures from scrutiny. The strategy involves controlling public perception and drowning out voices that challenge the status quo. These attacks are not random but calculated, targeting the personal lives and reputations of victims like Cassie to undermine their strength and resolve. Jaguar's insight shines a light on how deeply entrenched this system is, where justice is not just about court battles but also about winning the public narrative. She calls attention to how this environment makes it extremely difficult for victims to seek support or justice. The combination of personal trauma and public vilification creates a near impossible situation, where speaking out can mean risking everything. Jaguar's testimony serves as a rallying cry for change, urging the industry and audience alike to recognize these harmful dynamics and support those brave enough to speak. Jaguar Wright exposes a hidden world where violence and abuse aren't just whispered rumors, but harsh realities endured behind closed doors. She reveals that women close to Diddy suffered not only emotional torment, but physical assaults witnessed by others who chose silence over intervention. This culture of fear traps victims, while perpetrators act with impunity, protected by fame and influence. Jaguar's words force us to confront the uncomfortable truth about abuse in elite circles, where power shields wrongdoing and silences cries for help. She stresses that these aren't isolated incidents, but part of a troubling pattern repeated over time. The persistence of such abuse underscores the urgent need for accountability and transparency. By bringing these dark moments into the light, Jaguar challenges society to look beyond surface narratives and recognize the human cost of unchecked power. Breaking the culture of silence is paramount. Jaguar calls on victims and witnesses alike to speak out, reminding them that change begins with courage. Her testimony is a beacon for those who feel voiceless, urging them to come forward and demand justice. This call to action highlights that exposing the truth is the essential first step toward healing and reform. Her courageous voice is a powerful challenge to the entertainment industry, a demand that it confront its darkest secrets and create a safer, fairer environment for all. Jaguar's revelations serve as a rallying cry to dismantle protective walls and end the cycle of abuse that has persisted far too long. Jaguar Wright lifts the veil on a world where violence and intimidation have long operated behind the polished facade of fame. She recounts harrowing experiences where physical abuse was not just rumored but witnessed by those within the industry, yet met with silence. Women close to Diddy endured not only emotional manipulation, but physical harm, a reality often hidden from the public eye. This silence, born from fear and power, enabled a cycle where abusers act with near impunity, confident their status shields them from consequences. Her revelations expose a deeply ingrained culture of complicity, where the presence of witnesses does not guarantee intervention or justice. Instead, a network of loyalty and intimidation keeps victims isolated and perpetrators protected. Jaguar's voice brings urgency to breaking this pattern, stressing that acknowledging these abuses is crucial to ending the cycle. She emphasizes that the persistence of such abuse across time and multiple victims signals a systemic failure, not just of individuals, but of the structures meant to protect the vulnerable. Her testimony calls for transparency and demands that those with knowledge stop hiding behind fear or influence. Jaguar urges those who have been silenced or overlooked to find strength in speaking out, positioning courage as the first step toward healing. Her words resonate beyond the entertainment world, serving as a rallying cry for all survivors to break free from silence and reclaim their narratives. In challenging the entertainment industry to confront these uncomfortable truths, Jaguar's revelations strike at the heart of power dynamics that have long kept abuse concealed. Her courage opens the door for reform, insisting that lasting change depends on dismantling the protective barriers that have shielded abusers and marginalized victims. What do you think about Jaguar Wright's explosive revelations? Do you believe justice will finally catch up with those hiding behind fame and power? Drop your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. We want to hear your side of the story. Don't forget to like this video if you found it eye-opening and subscribe for more exclusive insider stories.